Hi, and welcome to this Leeds Civic Trust podcast, where we chat with the people shaping Leeds and beyond. Today, we're joined by Jason Rockett from Potter Space, a company helping businesses grow by creating smart, sustainable places to work and trade, all with a strong Yorkshire connection. We'll be talking about what they do, why it matters, and how it all fits into the bigger picture for Leeds. All right, okay. So to start with, can you give us a quick overview of Potter Space and what your role is in shaping the property landscape in Yorkshire and beyond?
Okay, Potter Space, we're a family-owned business. We have some 250 acres across the country and 1.7 million square feet of accommodation. We specialise mainly in the small to mid-box I&L sector. We were established the company was established back in 1965. So this is our 60th anniversary, much like the Civic Trust of Leeds as well. So, you know, great knowledge of the I&L sector. We're originally an industrial and logistics company who in 2016 sold the company, and then there was a decision to become a property company. Already had quite a significant holding in property in I&L sector, obviously had a great understanding of it, but there was a major decision to decide to sell the I&L the logistics company, and actually invest in I&L property, become a property company. And so in 2018, Potter Space was born.
So, what inspired the founding of Potter Space, and how the company's mission evolved over the years?
So the gentleman who started it was Derek Potter. And he always tells me he started off with £1,900. I hope I've got that right, Derek, and a little yellow lorry. And basically, that's how it started. From small beginnings, he grew it into a very substantial logistics company to the extent they had some 450 employees. So they were substantial size. And then, as I said, they were bought out. The family decided, made a big decision to sell out the logistics side to it. And interesting enough, out of 450 people, only 3 people lost their jobs in that. It shows, the values that the family have as well. And, they've continued that. So then, obviously, moved on to the property side and Potter Space. And Potter Space has evolved over a number of years now to where we are now.
So, what drew you personally to the property sector? And kind of what keeps you motivated?
That's a long, long story. So I was trying to think about this the other day, actually, of how I ended up property. When I was at sixth form, all I wanted to do was kick a football around for a living. And the careers advisor said, "No, Jason, you've got to have a backup plan." And I said, "Well, I'm a good cricketer. I'll become a cricketer." He said, "No, you've got to have a proper job." And I ended up doing some work experience at a local council, building surveying and general practice surveying. And I thought it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I found it was, not only the property aspect, but more so the people aspect of it. And that's what I always look at our sector. I think it's real people business, people sector. So I ended up applying for a degree at Sheffield Hallam University, Urban Land Economics. And I did that for 4 years in a sandwich year in Middlesbrough. And then I came out in one of the recessions. I won't say which one because I'll tell you my age, that one. But and I ended up being a footballer, to be fair. I got signed for Rotherham United initially, and I was a footballer for a number of years. But I kept my hand in. I'd listened to my careers advisor. I kept my hand in. I worked part-time for a company called Scarborough Property Company for the time being. And so when I finished my football career, I went and worked full-time for Scarborough Property Company, who by then had in the city here, in Leeds City.
So you're not a Leeds fan?
I'm certainly not a Leeds fan.
Who
I'm actually a Villa fan.
Oh, really?
I grew up in my younger days. I grew up in my younger days in Birmingham. So I moved after that. So I was always a Villa fan. Although I've lived in Sheffield a long time. So these people won't like it, but I'm more biased towards Sheffield United.
So, what would you say differentiates Potter Space from other property developers in Leeds?
It's interesting. We've walked the walk. We've been a logistics company. You know, we've walked that walk and we understand. And I think the key is understanding your customers. A lot of property companies now call them customers rather than tenants. Do they really mean it? Some do, some don't. But actually, if you look on all our sites, we've had these customers for quite a long time and we work with them through the good times and through the bad times. And probably the bad times, you know, when customers can't afford to pay a rent check, quarterly rent check, how do you work with them to ensure they can do that? You know, when there's issues, you've got to sort of almost, we put ourselves in their shoes and try and understand what keeps them awake at night and then to try and address that. So, as I said, we've had the sites for quite a long time, you know, and we know the customers very well and we know the issues. And so we try and work with them to adapt to those issues. Yes, we are commercial. We're a commercial property company at the end of the day. But I think we go that extra mile with our customers. You know, funnily enough, the other day, as I've just said, it's our 60th anniversary. We did a roadshow, a customer roadshow, where Derek and I were serving up food to all the customers on site. So we had something like 500 people in the week we'd done 4 of our sites the other week. You know, it wasn't a gimmick. That was us trying to give back something, a bit of fun as well, a bit of enjoyment, and actually meeting not only the customers we deal with at certain levels, but all the people who work for them as well and the employees there. That's the difference, I feel, that sets us apart.
Putting the people first.
Putting the people first.
So in terms of standout developments, what are some of your favourites that Potter Space have been involved with?
I suppose, as I said, we've got 5 sites, and I came in 2020, just after COVID, and we put together a 5-year plan. We specialise in small to mid box, and predominantly where we've developed is at Ripon, our site at Ripon, which is sort of our home in many ways, where the chairman lives. You know, we've evolved from there, and we moved later on to Leeds. But you know, there's some really the quality of the buildings there, and at Droitwich as well, where we've developed mainly, as I said, between 15 and 30,000 square feet buildings. We built some of the over 100,000 square feet at Ripon in several different buildings for some customers pre-let, but mainly, and this is where the quality comes in, it's important they've mainly been spec build, and the customers will come afterwards. And it's interesting, one of the things that we look at, our strapline, you'll see it's home for business. And it is creating that home for business. So the quality of buildings that we produce, we've got in-house construction team now as well, who deliver those buildings. And each time you say, you know, which ones are your special buildings? Well, we spend a lot of time in the design of those buildings. So they've evolved. So if I look at our Droitwich site, which is some of our latest buildings that we built, we've just completed, or we're completing the final 50,000, another 50,000 square feet, 2 units there. You know, it's evolved whereby the design of it's evolved. We learn from our mistakes. So when you say which one's your favourite, I sort of look at them and go, actually, I can show you a timeline where they've evolved, we've improved things. We thought, oh, the offices don't quite work as well as they should do. How do we revisit that? So I'd say the latest one's my favourite.
So you're making kind of amendments where they need to be for the people. Yeah.
All the time we listen to, you know, it's the feedback you get. It's interesting on offices, and we can touch on it later on, but there's a big change. There's a lot more co-location with I&L at the moment. So if you look at units, there used to be something like 5% office, and the office was a token gesture. You know, most industrial, it's not anymore. You know, it's a real heartbeat for a lot of them. And we've actually, on our latest unit, we haven't built the offices in. We've put the structures in to allow for those offices to be put in. But actually, when a customer's come along, they all want different requirements, and their requirements are getting bigger and bigger because they're bringing office staff, you know, and also warehousing. If you've seen our big things in small boxes research, the diversity of employment now in warehouses is no longer just a forklift driver. There's data people, there's analysts, there's managers, there's lots of different skill sets, and a lot more office-based people. So there's a bigger office requirement as well. So it's evolving all the time, and that's why we evolve. You we evolve all our buildings.
Is there quite a bit of growth in North Yorkshire? Like, do you do a lot of work in North Yorkshire?
Yeah, we do a lot of work. We've also got sites across the country, but we've got sites in Selby. We've got sites in Ripon as well. So that's over 1 million square feet we have there. So quite a significant amount of stuff. And, we've moved to Leeds for a reason. It's a major conurbation, a real hub in the county is Leeds, and it's a growing city and it's a evolving city in many ways, which I think some people will be surprised. But I came back to Leeds after being in London for quite a while, and I was utterly amazed how much it had changed. And I remember going to a few meetings, and one of them was a Civic Trust lunch, where people were commenting on design and this and that, and I was like, "You've been here too long. You don't realise how good the city and how the city's evolved." You look at some of the city centre development, whether it's residential, whether it's office buildings, it's really come on as a city, and it's got a real good vibe and buzz to it. You saw that with, it attracts UK Reef, which how many people came to UK Reef? 15,000. That's phenomenal. Real tick box.
So, sustainability, it's a really big concern these days. So, how is Potter Space integrating environmentally responsible practices into its developments?
Well, one of the benefits we've got an in-house construction team, so we can adapt and we can control what they do. So they recycle a lot, reclaim stone, and although we're looking at, we've got canteen design that we're looking at recycled steel at the present time. So we're really, and all our buildings are BREEAM. They were BREEAM Vet. It was interesting, going back to a conversation that I had when I started probably in about 2020, 21 with agents, said about BREEAM Very Good. They said, "Why are you doing it?" I said, "Well, we believe in it. We know at the time we didn't have to do that, and we were heading for BREEAM Very Good." And it's funny, I have the same conversation with them now. They say, "Oh," and I always remind them, "Do you remember the conversation when you said we didn't need it, but now you're saying, oh, it's the basis, it's the base." And now we're pushing for excellent, and you keep pushing out those boundaries. So really, from our side, we take it very important. The same with our older buildings, EPC ratings. Now that's going to be a major cliff edge coming, because if you look at 2027, it's perceived to be C, then B 2030. And you look at the number in the research, something like 85% of buildings in the small to mid box wouldn't hit the 2030 numbers. So we've really sort of looked at our older buildings and looked at how we improve their efficiency and sustainability. It's always, if you could refurbish, that's the best way to go. Sometimes you do have to knock down. So can you use the materials? We take very little off-site. So that's important about the cut and fill and how we work on the cut and fill and how we adapt a site, so we ensure that we're not actually adding to the road miles. We've got 3 sites that have rail as well. So when we're looking at a bigger scheme at the current time, we're looking at how do we rail things in, bring things in by rail. So, we really take that seriously. One thing, and we'll come on to it later on, is obviously some of the technology is not quite there. We've got PVs over our roofs. Very, battery technology is not quite there to help us, and also the grid doesn't help us in many ways as well. But yeah, we're certainly very much on sustainability, but it's a journey for us as well. I'm not saying we're perfect, by the way. We've got a big piece ongoing at the moment that we're working on, with our own business at the present time. We're all swapping to electric cars, but it's trying to have that consistency and not doing it ad hoc and making sure it's across the whole business.
Where are the sites that you've got rail?
So we've got rail at Selby, we've got rail at Knowsley, we've got rail down at Ely near Cambridge. So there, our chairman, he typical entrepreneur, he's got, sort of looking at foresight and stuff like that. And, he's still, and we believe there is a future for rail, and a massive future. It takes too long for my liking, because it's network rail and it's public sector type at times, and they've got their health and safety and issues like that. But you look at it, actually, the amount of rail now connected INL, industrial logistic developments that are coming up, major strategic positions where, if you look at iPort and others that have come up, it is increasing importance. And if you can fill the train both ways, it makes perfect sense, to transport goods around the country. A lot more efficient, less lorries on the road as well. I think we'll never clear all lorries off the road, I'm afraid. But if you have a balance between the two, and that's where really, at the moment, there's a lot of focus on passenger trains. There needs to be a bit more focus on freight trains.
Are there any other trends that you think might reshape the property sector in the next decade?
I think co-location will continue in industrial and logistics. There will be more offices, more. There'll be a lot more office space required with industrial. I think mixed use is the one thing I think will change, because it's got to. There's a lack of land. We want to build thousands and thousands of houses, which is quite right. We need to address the housing situation. But with that, you've got to put the infrastructure in. With the infrastructure, you've got to. I&L sector is really infrastructure. It supports all those. So then you've got to look at how do you work your mixed use schemes. We've got a certain amount of land in this country, and there's a lot of green belt as well, which we don't want to necessarily go into the green belt. There's obviously opportunities of brownfield and such like recycling. But then you've got to say, right, actually, we've got to be a bit cleverer. And is it in cities that you see mixed use actually on the same building plot? So actually you go up, you may have industrial or logistics on the ground floor, offices, residential going up. I think we've got to think outside the box as an industry going forward. There will be improvements in technology. I think sustainability and green credentials is one of the biggest things going forward. I think technology will start catching up, and it needs to start catching up because the batteries aren't there yet. I think we'll see hydrogen being used, certainly maybe lorries, etc., and transport around the country, but, powering buildings, I think wind technology, stuff like that. But it's not quite, we look at it all the time at the moment. We're looking at, what's the next future? And the future will be, I'd like to think we don't have to rely on the grid on any of our buildings. Actually, we're totally self-sufficient from those. So we don't have the issues when, utility prices go through the roof and our customers are affected because, their costs are going up. We can actually, and I think that will happen long-term wise, is that actually the technology, and it's getting there, but it's not happening fast enough. That we'll have battery technology, we'll have better solar. The grid will be a bit better, more accommodating to actually putting stuff back into the grid. But actually, there'll be others such as hydrogen, such as wind power, and we'll build on that.
So, if you could change one thing about the UK's planning or property development approval system, what would it be?
Just one thing.
Take your pick.
I will stick to one thing. I would outsource certain types of planning. Why? Because I actually think the government are doing a great job on the planning, consulting. They're actually trying to progress something to make planning a lot easier. They recognise if the economy is going to grow, we've got to ease up on the planning side and make it easier. It's not so hard to get planning, but you do all that, and then you haven't got enough planning officers, and that there's not the resource. So many have gone to private sector now. So much like in the building regs happened, the inspectors, they outsourced a lot of them. They're still professionals. They've still got the same qualifications. They still adhere to the same. I'm not saying they're creating policy. I say it's more maybe the stuff that's delegated and more processed stuff. If you do that, then at least we start getting the pressure off planners so they can look at more strategically in the local plans and how we develop areas and create more land and create more opportunity, and just take that day-to-day sort of weight off. So that mine is outsource it.
So obviously, Potter Space is a major Leeds developer. So when you do projects, do you work with local contractors and suppliers? So you keep your developments sort of regionally grounded?
We try to use, so say on our design teams, our agents, very much wherever they're the local area, certainly in our agents, they've got the expertise, architects. So we try and use as much as, we can, local firms. One, because, they've got great knowledge. And that's a key important thing, we're using their knowledge to deliver quality, deliver good schemes as well. So wherever we are, and also on our construction side, because we've got in-house construction, we self-deliver. We don't do third party, we just do our own buildings. We try to use subcontractors that are local as well, where we can. Sometimes you don't have quite, they might not be in a location we're at the right skill base for it. Wherever possible, we try and use local because it benefits us. It benefits us through the knowledge of them, and we like to create loyalty. If I'm honest with you, we deal with a lot of really good people. We like to create loyalty. We hope sort of it reciprocates in many ways.
Similar sort of question, I suppose. But do you engage with the local authorities and communities and?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Wherever we are, we engage with the key stakeholders, whether it be the local authority, local schools, local communities. We place great importance on local communities. So it's not just for planning we do this. Wherever we're fortunate we've got established estates, in various locations where we've established good relations with those local communities, those local authorities, because we're a big investor in those and we recognise the importance, and effectively our customers are big employers in that area. So, we recognise that importance, but we recognise the importance of giving back. We've got a good, on two of our sites, one at Ripon, one down at Drip, we've got a great schools programme. We invite primary schools to our sites. The construction guys and women will basically show them how to put pipes together, just practical things. They love it. School kids absolutely find it, fantastic, and that's where I sort of look at the nice part of our job is being able to give back to the community, and hopefully some of those children will turn around and go, do you know what? I wouldn't mind going into that industry or that sector, or that's quite interesting. So yeah, we put a lot back there. We engage a lot with the Chamber of Commerce, whoever, because as I said, we really recognise the importance as a company, any of the communities that we're in.
Do you ever engage with Leeds Building College?
No, I don't at the present time.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, future thought, I suppose.
Yeah.
So, what new developments or initiatives are on the horizon for Potter Space?
Well, we've got a 15-year vision, which you say 15 years, that's a long time. Well, we're a family business. There's lots of there's more generations coming up, and it's important to them that we see where we're going. But within that, we've got a 5-year strategy. We haven't bought or sold anything since Derek started on this journey. And where we are now is we moved to Leeds as part of our vision was to be central in Leeds and to have that as our main head office, but also strategically to be market facing in the region, so we can acquire more. I'm not going to say what we're acquiring, etc., but so we can be more prevalent in this region. Very much our focus is sort of 1.5 hours from Leeds for future development, and that's where we're focusing at the time. We've still got our estates elsewhere within the country, but the future, very much the future, is 1.5 hours within what we call our region.
Where do you see yourself in sort of the next 10 years within that?
Where do I sit?
Yeah.
Still as MD. I'm still young.
Yeah.
At heart, anyway. No, I started a journey with Potter Space, and when I first had the interviews, I found it a really interesting company. And do you know what? I found the family really interesting, particularly Derek. How enthusiastic he was. I always tell this story. We walked around one of the sites around Ripon. Normally it'll take you half an hour to 45 minutes. Took us about an hour and a half. And why was that? Is because Derek stopped to speak to everyone. And you suddenly got a feeling of, right, I understand where this business is, and I understand what their priorities are. I can buy into that ethos. And, also the wish to grow the business as well. Really important on that side to grow the business. And that's, the next generation, you know, they're just the same as well. Very supportive of what we've done. Certainly, we've got something like 20 plus employees now, and a lot based in Leeds. So we've grown we've moved across from Ripon, moved to Leeds, and certainly, from my side, I look at it and sometimes I look back at where we've come from, how much we've done, but still how much there is to do, and that the how much there is to do excites me more than what we've done.
So, lastly, to wrap things up, what advice would you give to someone that's looking to enter the commercial property sector today?
Wow. Is that a person or?
I don't know, it can be
individual?
general, yeah.
I'll do the first. Look, I think it's a great industry, property industry. I get frustrated in part that it's not diverse enough, and that does frustrate me. I think it's such a great people industry. It should be more. So there should be more people from different sectors. And that's a slight frustration on my side. However, it's a fantastic people industry. There's so many different elements to it that if you're good at something, you can do it. If you're good at something else, there's something else to do. So there's so many different things to the sector. And my advice is, do your research and understand things. Knowledge is really important.